Okay. Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday.
Hello.
So we are hearing today mostly from Erica and Riley. So I'm gonna, let's see. Reminder that I need your bios by next week for the conference. Um, we have not yet started advertising it, but uh the conference app is live. So if you would like to download, it's a free app for your smartphone. If you search 2023 April conference in the App Store or the Google Play Store, you can find it, and you'll find the schedule and the different vendors and all the speakers and the attendees. You just have to sign in with the email you use to register for the conference, which I think for y'all is your primary emails, like whatever I email you on regularly, because I was the one who put your emails into the app. So whichever email you usually talk to me through, it's that one. But we have fancy little app, which you can't see because my phone washes it out, but you can download it. So if you get me those bios, I can put your profile on the app. So then when I go, for example, I know I have Andy's already. So if I go to presenters and then I scroll, I can get to, that's how the alphabet works. You can't see it because phone, but I have Andy's profile. It's right there. Um, so, um, I think that's it. If you're rooming with somebody at the conference, which many of you are, I'm going to send emails this week reintroducing everybody. Most of you are rooming with somebody who is also from Lead On, so you all should mostly know each other. But I will send emails being like, here, reminder, here's your roommate. Now you can communicate about things if you would like to. I think that's all that I had reminder wise. So I'm gonna turn it over to Erica and Riley to lead us.
Shall we do introductions first?
Sure. But I figured I wanted to let y'all introduce your icebreaker thing you wanted to do.
I think we were going to do the name game at the end.
Yeah, that's gonna be at the end.
That's later. Okay. I misunderstood.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm not sorry.
So at this point, I think mostly we all know each other, but I would love to have thought of a good icebreaker before this moment.
I did write in the slide a sample
you
icebreaker,
did.
which is like, if you could be in any movie, what would it be? And honestly, it could mean like or actually inside of the movie, or it could be like you're playing in a movie. So
I love this question. Erica, what movie would you be in?
I actually didn't think of what movie I would be in, but one of my favorite movies is Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I feel like that would be a very cool movie to be in. So yeah.
Excellent. All right, who's going next?
Riley.
All right. My name is Riley, so we're doing name, pronouns, and where you're from, and the question. Abby, could you put that in the chat for everyone? Thank you. My name is Riley. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Oregon, and I would be in any like early 2000s Barbie movie. I just feel like the aesthetic, the visuals, everything, it would be such a cool environment to be in. And Rachel, go ahead.
My name is Rachel Baca, she, her, and if I could be in any movie, I'd probably say The Little Mermaid because I love that movie till this day, and I still have the VHS, and I think it would just be so cool to be a mermaid.
Love that. Do you want to choose someone to go next?
I think I will choose Andy.
Hi there. I'm Andy Padilla, he, him pronouns. I'm from Northern California. And going it a little less on the like literally in the movie and more wanting to be an actor side, I would love to be a um, in a performance of Twelfth Night, which is a Shakespeare play. I've always thought like if I could play any role in any piece of fiction, I would love to play Feste from that Shakespearean play that's been a movie many a time. Yeah.
Love that.
Ryan, are you ready to go next?
I can. I'm gonna be on. I don't know what movie I'd like to be in. I really like the Lord of the Rings movies, so that's what I'll go with, just because I like those movies. But that's my name's Ryan. He, him pronouns. How about oh, I don't know. Jeremiah, have you gone?
I have not, and I'm Jeremiah Johnson. I'm he, him pronouns. That's what I use. I'm from Vernal, Utah, and the movie I'd probably want to be in is probably like Batman, because like I don't know, I really like the whole hero thing, and like the new Batmans are just so good and stuff. Really like them. And then next, I think I will call on Honora.
Hello, Medora. I use she, they pronouns. And if I wanted to be in a movie, I would also choose Lord of the Rings. I'm sorry, I would love to see Gandalf and like all of it. Like I just absorb being in Lord of the Rings. And I would love to meet Gollum. I have a heart for that little dude. Let's see, who would I look at the people. I shall pass it to Lavender.
Hello, my name is Lavender. I use she, they pronouns. I don't think that I can narrow it down to a specific movie, but definitely one of the Studio Ghibli films. I watched Howl's Moving Castle for the first time last night, and it was fantastic. And I love the vibes of all of the Ghibli movies. So definitely one of those for sure. And I will pass it to Cecile.
Hi, I'm Cecile. I live in Idaho. I missed the question, but
So we are doing name, pronouns, where you're from, and if you could be in any movie, what movie would you be in? Or film or play?
okay. I'm Cecile. live in Idaho. I use she or her pronouns. If I'll be in any movie, it would be I like Flash. I'll be in Flash. They are cool. I'll choose Ryan next.
Oh, Ryan went. So still left to go is Emily, Shika, Naomi, and Jaden.
Okay, I'll go with Jaden.
Jaden, are you able to unmute right now? Cool.
Yes. Hi, my name is Jaden. I'm from Utah, and that's a tough one for me. But I'd probably have to say if I could be in any movie, probably mm, Top Gun or Full Metal Jacket. I don't know.
Classics. All right, Jaden, should we call on Emily, Shika,
Yeah,
or Naomi?
Yeah, it's about all.
Let's go to Naomi.
Hi everyone, I'm Naomi. I'm from Washington. I use she, her pronouns. I've always wanted to direct a movie actually, so I would really love to direct like a mystery slash thriller movie. But if I had to be in one, I am a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings movies, and I would love to do the fight scenes. That would be like, I'd love to do all my own fight scenes. That's been a dream. So yeah. And I think who's lost, Amy?
We've got Emily and Shika.
Shika. And I apologize. I said no, Abby. Sorry. Abby. Got it. All right.
Hi.
Go for it, Shika.
Okay. Hi, I'm Shika. She, her pronouns from Georgia, and I work at Disability Link, a nonprofit. And I would say the movie I'd want to be in is Moana, because I love the beach and the ocean.
Excellent. All right, last but not least, Emily.
Hi, my name's Emily Robinson. I live in Grantsville, West Virginia. If I could be in any movie, Dolphin Tale. And pronouns are she, her.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. I'm Abby, she, they pronouns. I'm from Massachusetts. And I would definitely want to be in a musical because I am just I'm a musical person and I love to sing and dance. So like I did a lot of theater, which I'm sure is shocking to nobody here. But I really almost any like movie musical I think would be just so fun to be in. Okay, I'm gonna make sure let's turn it back over to Riley and Erica.
So I'm going to give everyone a little bit more information about me and where I'm from, and then Erica will do the same. So, like I said, my name is Riley. I'm from Oregon. I recently graduated high school. I'm currently starting my gap year. And then I plan to go to Oregon State to pursue a degree in public health. And I'm also very interested in international relations and politics and really anything like biomedical wise. I have a lot of interests, and it's taken me a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to narrow it down for one major in college. But Yeah, and I met Abby through Empower Her Camp, which is part of a nonprofit called Disability Empower Network. And so we're going to be talking about group facilitation today. So kind of how you more specifically, we'll be talking about conversation within group facilitation. And I have experience doing or being a participant in a lot of group conversations, and I've also been a part of a lot of panels. Panels are a little bit more formal than what we'll be doing. It's more experts and people who've lived through experiences that are similar. And so, yeah, that's my experience. Erica, do you want to go?
Yes, my name is Erica. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from New York, and I am currently a grad student of disability studies, and I want to be a screenwriter. Right now, I work for a very small production company. So yeah, and I have experienced. I started a club during undergrad. So yeah, that's my experience, I guess.
And both of us will be our mentors currently, or some of you are sending your journals to us, and then we'll be in California with you, helping you guys facilitate the group conversations that you're going to be having. And today we're going to, I think, brainstorm some topics, because I believe, Abby, correct me if I'm wrong, but each table is a different topic. Cecilia, did you have a question?
Yeah. My question is like, what are we are we gonna do something with the journals when we go to California?
Oh, with the journals.
Yeah.
Abby, would you be able to answer that?
Sure. So I would love for y'all to have one journal entry that you would feel comfortable maybe sharing something about in person at the conference. Mostly the journals are just so Riley and Erica and I also know that y'all are taking some time to reflect on the things that you're learning, but also so you have a method of which like to reflect and to think about the things that we're learning each week, because I know it's a lot of information, and for some of us it's kind of late at night. So but if you would have like one something from a journal that you might be willing to talk about or share with others when we're in person at the conference, I think that that would be a really great thing to have, because when y'all are at the conference, Riley and Erica are going to be talking with y'all about self-advocacy. And I think that the journals play really nicely into that. So, but mostly they're just for you.
Okay. So do we bring our own, or we're gonna find it there?
That's a great question. I know we have everything that y'all submitted digitally, but I think probably plan on bringing your own, only because we won't know which ones you want to share.
All right.
But if it's tricky to bring your own for whatever reason, just let us know which week you want us to have, and we can make sure to have it there for you.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So at the conference, all of you are going to be helping facilitate conversations on topics at each table. And so today we are going to brainstorm some topics that we can use at the conference. And Abby, are we going to be deciding, or are people going to decide which topic they want to go to today?
I don't think we have to decide today. I think let's come up with a variety of topics, and then hopefully folks can, pick and slot themselves into where they want to go. But the idea is basically we're going to have a room set up with multiple, the tables are like banquet tables. So they're, just like the round tables that you would find at a wedding or at, if you've been to conferences before. And all of the folks who are attending the youth conference are going to get the opportunity to go sit at one of those tables and talk with you all about disability related topics. So last year, Riley and Erica's class addressed education, disability representation in the media, disability history, and I believe was advocacy the last one.
Is either advocacy or something climate change related? I can't remember.
I don't believe we did climate change, because if we did, I probably would have been in that group. So
okay.
So we pick topics that they were interested in, and they, filled into those groups. I would really love y'all to be the ones to come up with the topics this year. So it can be some of those same ones that we used last year, because, some topics never really go away, like housing or transportation or history. All of those things are things that stick around in the disability community forever. There are things we're going to be talking about, and it's work that people continue to do every day. A lot of you work at SILS, and I'm sure that a lot of you are doing that kind of work with your consumers. Or you are a consumer and you're talking to somebody at your center about those things. I'm going to stop talking now.
Abby, can you bring up the slides, please? Thank you. So the first slide says group facilitation, Riley Hurt and Hergomonis. So who here has experience with group facilitation?
Andy, Lavender, and Naomi do.
So does anyone want to share their experience in that?
Go ahead, Andy.
I can share a little. So while I was at university, I was the director of a student-run environmental education program, and so I would hold weekly I would facilitate weekly collaboration meetings between our volunteers. In addition to that, I've also facilitated 2 different courses of supplemental instruction, which were like a specialty class led by a student, and in the case of the ones that I was doing, me, who had taken the class that, or the hard college class that the supplemental instruction paired with. And then in my current role, I've also facilitated some groups in the form of like a group outing for youth with disabilities, and I've helped co-facilitate a couple of focus groups.
Awesome. So group facilitation can really look like anything. For example, Andy, you talked about doing group outings. Sometimes group facilitation can mean you're taking people to an event or an experience. Also, it can look like what we're doing here is sitting at a table talking about a topic. Erica, do you have anything to add? Or should we?
And anyone like had some of the challenges of group facilitation, like what do you need to think about before you get into the group?
Well, I can say I have to do this quite a bit for work. And I think one of the harder parts about planning is that you have to plan a way to keep people engaged for the whatever the duration of the meeting is, without making people feel uncomfortable or like what you're doing is kind of like kitschy and strange. So I think having good group interaction that doesn't feel forced is a important part of group facilitation that I think can be challenging if you've never had to do it before.
Yes, that is definitely correct, and that is one of the issues that we will be addressing tonight. Abby, would you be able to go to the next slide, please? So, a big part of group facilitation is having icebreakers. A lot of people can be nervous at the beginning of a group, so sometimes they need help like in getting the conversation started. And one of the tips I wrote is don't really ask people to share a fun fact, because I never know a fun fact about myself. So, but that's just my personal preference.
I literally have nightmares about when people ask me to share a fun fact about myself in an interview or something. So yeah, I agree with Erica on that one. Icebreakers can be great to lighten the mood a little bit and get people talking. I like to start with like a question about the topic that we're discussing or that we're supposed to discuss, or more of a statement to get people's minds working and in gear with what we're doing. And at the conference, it'll be a roundtable discussion. So it'll be nice and easy to potentially call on someone or just let people start talking about what they want to talk about. Abby, could you move to the next slide?
Sure. Can I add something about fun facts?
Go ahead.
My fun fact is that everybody spends the whole time thinking of their own fun fact and not actually listening to the fun facts that anybody else is offering.
Yes.
So
and I'm so mad because I realized what I wanted my fun fact to be after it was too late. I used to be able to say my fun fact was I never got stung by a bee, but then last month I got stung by a bee, so now I have no fun fact.
No. All right.
So a big thing about groups are they are unpredictable because they're people, and people are never really predictable. So you have to be flexible. Let the conversation flow, even if it's going in a direction you didn't expect. But if the conversation is like really not on topic, then you could add your own thoughts to the topic and try to get it back on track.
For this slide, I really think about what the presenter last week talked about, how kind of a conversation and negotiating is keeping, I guess this is a metaphor that I thought up after listening to him. It's kind of keeping water in a river instead of trying to let it spill over. So spilling over can mean people are off topic, or people are not participating or not listening fully, or distracted with something else. Trying to keep everybody in and on topic is really difficult to do, but like Erica said, being flexible can be super helpful.
We're gonna definitely, y'all are gonna get practice in doing this. On the topic of irrelevant tangents, Riley and Erica and I met prior to today's meeting just to talk over any last minute little things. We ended up talking about Empower Camp for like 20 minutes out of the 45 minutes that we were chatting. So when I say it's very easy to go off on tangents, it is. And people are going to do it because somebody's going to get a little bug of like, they're going to get bit by that excitement when you're talking about something, and they're going to just veer off into nowhere land. But you will all hopefully have the skills to be able to turn them back around, get them back on the boat, back in the river.
So okay, so now we're on to the next slide. And a big thing I have is I feel like when you ask people yes or no questions, that can just kind of lead to a dead end, because someone can just say yes and then stop talking. So it's often better to come up with a more open-ended question so that people can have something to say rather than just yes or no.
I learned this when I was doing mock trial. So one of my favorite things to do is think about how a lawyer would present something. So if you are talking to somebody that committed, a crime, they stole a candy bar from a convenience store, you want to guide them to answer a question in a way that will let them keep talking, so that they keep talking about what they did and potentially trip over themselves. So that's not what we're doing here, but it's a great way to think about it. And so open-ended questions can be difficult to think of on the spot. And it's really up to the participants sometimes to keep the conversation going if you think of a yes or no question. So I think thinking of some open-ended questions beforehand would be really, really helpful. And that's why we're going to kind of brainstorm some topic ideas, and you guys get to eventually pick your own topics so that you can think of what you want to talk about beforehand. Abby, go ahead.
Okay. So, sorry. Something important is to encourage engagement, because sometimes someone may say one thing and then they'll never speak again for the rest of the time. So a good way to encourage engagement is to ask follow-up questions like, why do you think that? Or ask if anyone else feels the same way or has a different opinion, because that can also add to the conversation. And then I have that nice picture of these segue on the screen, because I wrote, you can use others' thoughts to elaborate on a topic or segue into a new one. And I was just waiting all night to say that. So
there's always going to be at least one person in your group who cannot handle uncomfortable silence. Many of you in this room, virtual room, might be that person. So if I were to ask a question and we all just sat here and stared at each other, eventually one of you is going to unmute your microphone and say something, because of the awkwardness will just feel too weird. So also don't be afraid to let people sit in silence for a little while, because it will spark conversation. Lavender says in the chat that they love a good pun, and well done. Oh no, did we? Okay, I was like, oh, we lost Erica's connection for a second, but you're here.
Yes.
Next slide.
Riley, do you have anything to add, or should we go to the next slide, or?
We can go to the next slide. Sounds good.
So a lot of times people can be shy, so some good ways to get people to open up to you are to make a joke, or you may even need to call on someone if like nobody is responding. You may have to be like, hey Riley, you need to say something, please. but don't like overuse that, because you don't really want to put people on the spot unless it's like really necessary.
Abby and Erica, what are some ways that somebody could get you to pipe up in a conversation?
Well, for me, it's talking about disability in the media, because that is my favorite thing to talk about. So
I think people really, the thing that most people know the most about in the world is themselves. Their own interests, their experiences. We spend every day of our lives with ourselves, and we know a lot about ourselves. So if you are having trouble getting someone to talk about anything, start asking them about them and say, hey, what are your experiences with education as a disabled person? Or, hey, what is your favorite show or movie that has a person with a disability in it? And likely that person will have an answer, or they'll say, you know what, I don't know. And then you can turn to the next person and say, hey, can you help them out? Why don't you think of something? And that can make conversation go. If you want me specifically to talk, ask me about video games or Disney World, and I will talk to you ad infinitum about either of those things.
I could have guessed.
Yes.
I should have placed a bet on it.
I'm going to Disneyland before the conference. I'm so excited.
Go ahead and move to the next slide.
I think also a really important way to get people to open up is to create a safe space where people feel comfortable sharing their opinions. Some ways you can do this is to remind people that they are welcome, or like if someone is dominating a conversation, you can gently be like, hey, I want to know what Riley has to say about this. And then if you notice any harassment or inappropriate behavior, which hopefully we won't have to deal with, but if we do, you may have to talk to the participant privately, or if it's really bad, you may need to ask them to leave, but hopefully not.
If there's a situation like that at the conference, that is part of what Riley and Erica and I are there for. So if you're running a group and somebody starts being extremely disrespectful or inappropriate for some reason, you can always feel free to tap any of us in, especially me, and I am happy to help deal with that person. But
confrontation is my favorite thing to do.
I was gonna say Riley's very good at it.
No, Andy, I've never heard of that term, but I would love if you could explain that to us, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who has never heard it.
Yeah, I can give a little explanation. So it's a term that I've heard recently used kind of as an alternate to safe space. It acknowledges that whenever you get a group of people discussing together, no individual is perfect. We all make mistakes and say things that we might not necessarily intend. As we learned last week, messages can get lost in all the filters of life. And so Brave Space acknowledges that the space isn't going to be perfect, but that we're going to strive together to create a safe space, and strive together that when we say something that, oh, that didn't come out quite right, let me step back and figure out how to reword that. And the Brave Space really invites people to share their stories, and acknowledges that there's a little bit of a fear barrier that sharing out has. But we're together going to be here creating a space that we encourage each other to share and are here to back each other up in elevating voices in the conversation. Yeah.
I think that's great, because I mean, no safe can ever truly be safe, but we want to make it a space where people can talk, and if they do make a mistake or hurt somebody's feelings, that they can learn from that and be able to go forward from there.
And as in any minority community, especially the disability community, it is sometimes really scary to share experiences, especially about hard topics. So I really appreciate that, Andy. Thank you for sharing that.
Abby, can we go to the next slide, please? Oh, and now we're on the name game. So Riley, can you explain this? Because I feel like I would be very bad at explaining it.
No worries. So this is the name game. We are going to take turns in this game. The first person, so it'll probably either be me or Erica, the first person starts by saying their name and a word that starts with the first letter of their first name. So my name is Riley. My name starts with the letter R. I, on the spirit of Disney, would say ratatouille is my word. And then the second person goes and repeats the name of the person that went before them. So if Erica was going, she would say, my name is Erica. The person that went before me is Riley. And then then you can state a word that starts with the first letter of your first name.
Okay, so I'll go next. The last person to speak was Riley, whose word was Ratatouille, which, by the way, I love that movie. I feel like it is so underrated. But my name is Erica, and my word is electric slide, I guess. And I'll
And
call.
so you'll be
who should
be sharing the
next victim?
Sorry.
Sorry. Andy, how about you go next, since I can remember?
I wanted want to do something else Disney related, but the only thing I can think of is Anaheim, and I can't stomach calling myself Anaheim Andy. So I'll go Avalanche Andy. Then we had Electric Slide Erica and Ratatouille Riley.
Ooh, throwing both in there.
That was great. You totally don't have to repeat all the prior names, because I have a terrible memory and I would never be able to do that. So nobody else worry about doing that. But that was great, Andy. Thank you. Who would like to go next?
I'll go. My name is Ryan, and let's see. I think I'll be Rhinoceros. Why not? And then the person before me was Andy, and he was an Avalanche, and decidedly not that place in California. And then am I supposed to pick someone?
You can pick someone, or we can just have someone.
Someone jump in. Why not? Jump in there, I believe.
I guess I'll go. This is Naomi. Hi. So Ryan was before me. Rhinoceros, Ryan. Do I say the Andy as well? Avalanche Andy?
No, you don't have to. No
Okay.
worries.
I'll just say I'm Naomi, fondly known as the name Naomi. It's been a childhood nickname for a long time. And yeah, I'll popcorn it, I suppose, over to Rachel.
Naomi, and since my name starts with the letter R, Rainbow.
Great. Who would like to go next?
I can go next. So that was Rainbow Rachel. And my name is Lavender. And I'm going with latte because that's a thing. A lavender latte. And I'll let somebody else go.
And that conversion.
I'll hop in. So we just heard from Lavender Latte, and I'm Abby, and I'm gonna go with Aardvark Abby. A lot of A's, and I'm gonna call on another A, Honora.
All right, so we had Aardvark Abbey, right? I hope I got it right. And then I'm not sure if Audacious starts with an A, but I feel like it does. So I'm gonna go Audacious Honora. Let's see. Who else?
I'll throw it in the chat who is left.
Okay, that would be a good idea because my brain doesn't work quite right.
That's a mood.
All right, I will go with Emily.
My name is Emily, and I'll go with Emu. Emily.
First.
This is Shika. That was Emily. I'm not sure what she said for her name. I think she said Emu.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say Sunrise. And next I'll go with Cecilia.
My name is Cecilia, so my That start with a C. I'll go with cat. And next, I'll choose Jaden.
Okay, how do we do this again?
So you were going to repeat the name of the person that went before you, which was Cecile, and then what word they
Okay.
chose.
Okay. All right, so the person that went before me was Cecile, and was it
C.
Cat Cecile?
Yeah.
My name is Jaden, and um, um, I guess Jolly Jaden, I suppose.
That works. Awesome.
Yeah. Call on Shika.
Chico went already. Left, we have Jeremiah and Elicity.
Call on Elicity then.
Okay, that was Jolly Jaden, and normally I'm adventurous, Elicity, but I think that's very basic, so I'll be artichoke, Elicity.
Great vegetable.
And then yeah, then I call on Jeremiah.
Jeremiah, are you able to go? You can put it in the chat too if that works. Okay. Abby, was that everyone?
I believe that was everyone.
Awesome.
Unless I don't, if we didn't get, no, that was everybody.
Great. All right. So, Erica, do you have anything to add before we move on to choosing topics and stuff, brainstorming topics?
No, I was about to say, so our next part is to choose topics, but yeah.
Awesome.
Do we want to choose topics and then take a little break, or do we want to take a break and then talk topics?
Let's take a break, but first, does anyone have any questions about anything on the slides or what we just talked about? Emily, do you have a question? Sorry.
That kick is no good.
I'm going to go ahead and guess that that was probably an accidental unmute, but Emily, if it was not, please feel free to unmute again.
Yeah. All right, now let's break. And Abby, I'm going to let you do the time zones because I'm bad at it.
All right, it is, we'll round up. We'll say it's, oh, there it is. It's 7:55 or 6:55 or 5:55 or 4:55. So let's come back 5 minutes after the hour. So in 10 minutes from now, we'll see y'all. Yes, Rachel, I will email out the PowerPoint. We'll see y'all in 10 minutes.
I'm gonna hop off for the break, but I'll be right back.
Okie doke, we'll see you when you get back.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. It is 5 minutes after the hour. That sounded much more energetic than I am currently feeling. But we're doing great.
Abby, would you be able to pull up like a whiteboard of sorts so that we can keep track of names and stuff? That
We
or
in-
not names, but topics.
We, in fact, have a whiteboard ability within Zoom. I
Technology.
believe folks can let's see. There we go. We can all contribute to the whiteboard.
Some people may not be able to see it because they're on a phone. Would you be able to like type the everything out as people are saying it?
Yes.
Awesome.
I'm on a computer and I got a 502 bad gateway error message.
Oh, you know what we'll do instead? Because if it's not going to work where people can see it, we'll figure that out another time. I'm just going to pull up like a Word document and I'll share my screen and we will type that way. But reminder that everybody may or may not be able to see the whiteboard due to various disabilities. So let's make sure we're speaking things out as well so everybody can be equally involved. Put it up on my big screen, make the font a couple sizes bigger. There we go.
Wait, Abby, didn't you say there was someone from the youth steering committee that has a specific?
Why can't I hear you, Erica? You're unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I think the rest of us can hear Erica. Abby.
I can.
Abby?
Abby, can you hear me?
Did we lose Abby? Abby! Oh no.
Can someone say something?
Hi.
Okay, now I hear.
Hi.
Yay.
Thank you for your patience.
I was just gonna ask because I know you said the other day that there was someone from the youth steering committee that wanted a specific group, so I don't know if we're gonna do that.
It's Noah, and he does want to talk about disability representation in the media.
I also do love I
Oh.
do love that topic. That is my favorite topic.
Can folks see that font size? If you're able to see my screen, I can zoom in as well. So we've got potential topics. One is disability representation in the media.
So, could I ask a question about the sort of logistics of this?
Sure.
I know we sort of went over this, but just to clarify, these are topics that we are going to be leading a discussion about with conference attendees?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Well then in that case, I mean, I think I'd like to do something vaguely advocacy related, but I don't know if we need to get more specific and talk about a particular issue or
I think
something
it
like that.
can be advocacy as a whole, but that is a big topic. So know that
Yeah.
you're probably going to get a lot of different people wanting to talk about different pieces.
Well, and I'm not an expert about everything, right? So it's not, I don't know about my confidence to lead a discussion about, every single advocacy topic, but
I mean,
we'll keep it on the back burner.
it is going to be like a round table, so we're not going to expect you to like come with this big presentation and like, so other people will be able to add their 2 cents, if that makes any sense.
Gotcha.
So something we could do is dial in on a couple different advocacy topics that people might feel comfortable talking about. And maybe once y'all decide on which groups you want to be in, which let's see, how many are you? You are 14. So that would be, I think we wanted to split up into 4 or 5 groups. So let's see what topics we come up with, and then we'll decide how to split out.
This is Felicity. Can I jump in? I can't raise my hand.
That's fine.
Yes.
Okay, so I was thinking a good topic would probably be, I was going to say family members at first, but then I got to thinking it's also people, in your environment, at your job, and things like that. But talking about disabling people with disabilities. For example, I get a lot of times I get people that talk to me as if me having a disability changes like the person that I am. So that's just an example to throw out there, but I think we should talk about disabling people with disabilities.
So would that kind of translate into like self-confidence, or would that be more like
maybe
ableism as a whole?
Yeah, the stigma or discrimination or ableism, or I don't know.
I don't necessarily self-confidence, because I can still be confident in myself and I can still treat me because I have disability, I'm lesser.
So what that sounds like to me is the idea of ableism, of, people treating you like you are lesser because of your disability, or people, treating you with kid gloves because of disability. Does that feel accurate, Felicity?
It does.
Cool.
Honora, did you have something to add?
Yes, I did. I was thinking for a topic, like finding resources in your community, especially if you're facing any sort of homelessness or you don't have food, being able to find those local resources and how to do that.
This is Emily. What about education advocacy or disability history?
Sounds great. I think Lavender, you were the next person to raise your hand.
Earlier, Andy raised his hand before me. So Andy, if you want to go, you can.
No, you can go.
Okay. I would love to talk about disability and neurodivergence.
Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, back in the first week of Lead On, there was a quote that really resonated with me, which was disability culture is about naming and claiming our heroes. And so I was thinking like a disability history discussion in which people are encouraged to share stories of people that they have found as heroes, and having that as kind of like a collaborative discussion, brainstorming awesome people in disability history, and helping folks learn some new folks. Yeah.
I like that suggestion. That's really cool. Rachel, go ahead.
I'm thinking like one about like how schools and colleges can accommodate for people with disabilities, like individual education plans, like how they can provide more resources, like how they can provide more accommodations for people who are taking tests, and how schools can be more inclusive for people with disabilities.
Definitely. I threw that in under the education. So feel free to, if folks have points that they think can go under any of these topics, feel free to chime in with some of those as well. Ultimately, I think we'll end up having 4 to 5 topics. So, but we'll hold on to all of them for conversations in the future as well. Legislative representatives.
And there are 2 people raising their hands, but for some reason I cannot see who. So if it's you, feel free to unmute.
I had a question for Rachel, actually. With what you were saying, to me, that kind of looking at it from my lens as a youth coordinator at a Center for Independent Living, I was wondering, is your question kind of regarding what pathways exist for advocating for increased options of accommodations at schools?
I think so. Like even also like advocating for like a lot more programs to include for people with disabilities, and how also more programs like in high schools and colleges can be more inclusive.
I remember last year during our education discussion, people did kind of share tips that maybe had worked for them as students, of like, hey, this is what I said to my, chair of special education at my school, or hey, when I was in college, I asked for this accommodation and it worked really well. Or other people talked about like, hey, this is the problem that I had with this system, and I think it needs to change in this way. So I think that there's a lot of really rich conversation that can be had around education, especially when we're talking to, young people with disabilities, because we're going to have quite the age range of folks at youth conference.
Under resource sharing or locating, you could put increasing funding or representation of SILs, maybe. I don't have one in my area, so it'd be nice to have one.
Yeah, I have one in my area, but I went one time and I felt like a lot of the people were a lot older than me, so I felt like I would feel awkward there because I didn't have much in common with them. So I do feel like with like young people specifically, it can be difficult to find their place. And Andy has raised his hand, and then Emily can go next.
What Erica was just saying sounds really like a cool concept of like what can people from outside of Sills do to influence and make Sills more youth friendly. I know April has provided a lot of tools of how Sill staff can make their Sill more youth friendly, but I haven't seen that tool set for the outside making Sills more youth friendly, and I think that would be a really cool discussion.
Emily, did you have something to add? You can also put
I
it in
was
the
just gonna say that I work for a Center for Independent Living, and I work remotely because there is not an office where I live, and I serve 8 counties.
You serve 8 counties? Or a county?
8. I believe Emily serves 8, as in one more than 7.
Oh my. Wow.
Yeah. And I do it out of my house.
Man, this is why we got to get rural Sills more money.
And I'm the youngest person that works for my center.
Wow.
That's
Yeah,
so
here-
many people.
Here in Oregon, we have, so basically our state is at the top, it's Portland, then it's Salem, and then it's Eugene. And then there's one independent living center on the coast. And so Portland and Eugene have one, have their own independent living centers, but Salem, which is the capital of Oregon, does not, and that's where I live, except the statewide independent living center offices are located in Salem. Isn't that funny? I have been telling them that since a long time, and do they do anything? No, unfortunately. But if they do open one in Salem, it's taking funding away from the others. So it's kind of a tricky situation to be in.
So for those of you who are advocacy minded, I will say that as long as the government doesn't shut down, it is very likely that there will be folks from the Administration on Community Living at the conference. I don't think it'll be Jill Jacobs because last I heard she has COVID, which sucks. And I hope she feels better soon. But the Administration on Community Living, for those who don't know, is the government agency that provides a lot of the funding for centers for independent living, and does a lot of the the overarching like governmental management of centers. So if there's things y'all want to see or hear from them, let us know.
I have a whole list I'd like to see them do.
Yes, you and me both, Emily.
Bring your list. Bring your list.
All 5 core services. That's a thing.
Yeah. So April is involved in the 5 for 5 campaign, which is a campaign that is advocating for more core funding for centers for independent living. We are partnering with all of the major independent living membership organizations in the US on that. And we will certainly be talking about it at the conference.
Go ahead, Lavender.
I was also going to say we could add invisible disabilities to this list. And I feel like in that case, we could potentially scaffold neurodivergence under that. But yeah. Or yeah.
Other way around.
Yeah.
I personally would love to see that. Because I think that for some context, prior to working at April, I had not been involved with independent living. I knew what it was, but I wasn't I didn't receive services from a center growing up, nor did any of my family members. And so working at April was a big shift for me. And as an autistic person and a person with other invisible disabilities, I would say that throughout disability history and throughout the history of the independent living movement, there has been a really big focus on physical disability. And I would say, in fact, a real lack of focus and representation for people with invisible disabilities. I think that it is a lot, particularly actually folks with cognitive and intellectual disabilities are
Yes.
extremely underserved.
There is definitely a hierarchy of impairment and the way our society treats different people, and that is a big issue in the disabled community.
Emily agrees.
Who's raising their hand?
We've got Lavender and Naomi.
I put my hand back up because I was going to add on to what you were saying, Abby.
Go for it.
I was just going to say, like, being in a program like this is pretty big for me as someone who is also ADHD and autistic. Like, I think it's a very nuanced conversation, but like my experience personally is that I've gone through life with a lot of privilege because I don't encounter the types of ableism that someone with a physical disability might, but also a profound lack of support because of ableism. And like, I maybe even now like wouldn't dare set foot either physically or virtually in a center for independent living because of my own internalized ableism, and the way that society treats people with invisible disabilities. It's almost like we're not disabled enough to receive support in the same way. So yeah,
And
conversation to have.
Can I offer a thought? Is a lot of what I'm hearing us talk about right now is kind of melding in with what I think Elicity was offering when talking about ableism. So I'm wondering if we can take this invisible disabilities conversation and like fold it into a larger conversation about ableism, or if we feel like we want these to be separate conversations. What do y'all think?
I mean, I think they can be separate conversations because I feel like there's a lot of nuance there to the point where people can talk about it all night. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so nuanced and so many layers that it's kind of hard to do them all in one group.
For sure. Naomi, then Ryan, and then Andy.
I think everybody's covered a lot of what I'm kind of like where my like interests lie. And I also want to agree with what everybody else has been saying. And I just feel like I have to add on just because as somebody who has a physical disability, but also invisible disabilities, and for whatever reason, sometimes people don't see my physical disability, so I can kind of like skate through with the invisibleness of it. And so when I ask for accommodations, the conversation of, are you disabled enough, always comes into the picture. And I'm like, okay, here we go again. Like, how many documentations? What do you need to prove you have a disability, et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't know. I felt like I just had to say something. It's very nuanced and it's very layered. And as speaking from somebody who works in the youth and adult space, that's a lot of the frustration that's coming from the youth and adult space, at least in my state, is either you're not disabled enough or you're not perceived as disabled. And so you have to fight. And I have to fight for my accommodations every single quarter, which is slightly annoying. So just having that is just an interesting table topic conversation to have. And like, what can you do to support yourselves? Because I've yet to find in schools a support system that can help with that. Anyways, that's me. I could talk all night, but I'm not going to. I just needed to add in. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like now it's a little bit we've covered everything as it relates to this topic. I kind of forgot to put my hand down, but I think just to add a additional piece there, I think one of the reasons sometimes that it feels like there isn't a ton of resources available, in addition to the fact that a lot of times there just literally isn't. At least as I was growing up with the congenital amputation, it felt like a lot of what was available I could not access because I was young. I didn't have like a traumatic injury, and a lot of support groups that exist are for people that had some sort of like traumatic experience, which I just didn't really have in terms of actually losing my limb. Or for example, the amount of times I've been thanked for my service, which is just a super awkward conversation every single time that happens, because I have to explain, no, I was not actually, I was not in the military. But I don't know. I think a lot of the resources that exist are set up with older people in mind, which makes sense because of the prevalence of disability among the population in terms of the age range. But at the same time, I think it can result in a misallocation of resources that doesn't really need to happen, or an excessive amount of means testing to figure out who qualifies for what. But as everyone else has concluded, we could go on about this all night. So
Ryan, it's so interesting that you say that, because I often, and I think that must be something that comes with like being an amputee, because so often that, like, my experience as an autistic person is that literally every resource is for children. And like the second you turn 21 or 22 or whatever your age is, that's out, like where you finish school, it's like you've fallen off a cliff. Like autism stops existing when you're in your 20s and 30s, and like unless you are somebody who is potentially going to go to like a day program, which I work full time. I was working full time outside of my home prior to working at April, which was, I'm going to tell you, really hard as an autistic person, but I did it. But services other than me having like a therapist do not exist, doesn't exist. And I just turned 32 this week. So like, it's so fascinating how this dichotomy exists, and it must have something to do with like the kind of disability you have.
Well, what I think it probably is the age at which you are expected by kind of the medical establishment to be diagnosed with a particular thing. So I think this is a problem that it seems like a lot of people are reckoning with right now, that the medical system has missed a lot of people in terms of diagnosing them with with whatever sort of invisible disability that they had throughout their entire life, but it wasn't caught whenever they were in childhood, or it was written off as something else whenever they could have been receiving treatment or resources the whole time. And I think in terms of amputation, it's almost the opposite. Like, you're not expected to be diagnosed with any sort of, that's typically not something that happens whenever you're young. I mean, about 50% of people that receive an amputation, it's a complication of diabetes, right? And then another big percentage is car crashes, and then there's a small percentage, like 2%, that is congenital, right? So it's just not something that happens very often in childhood. So it's I think it's just, I don't know, my hypothesis there is that it's just the age at which the medical establishment expects you to be presenting with that thing.
To add on to Ryan, what you're saying, and Abby, what you said, I was just recently told by a therapist that most people who receive an ADHD or autism diagnosis, and I quote, grow out of it, adding on to that those resources don't exist for people who are under 18. And I just turned 18 in April, and I cannot find anyone who will do an assessment for ADHD or autism. Anyway, I am not seeing that therapist anymore, if that helps. So
I just put something in the chat. I found a place in Minnesota that could potentially do an assessment for adults. So if anyone wants their information and wants to go to Minnesota, please let me know. I'm happy to send it to you.
That's where
Riley,
one of the speakers, Jill lives. We could go stay with her.
On a slightly more viable option for you, Riley, if you're looking for someone and are desperate enough to come down to Northern California, I know someone about 2 hours from the border.
Good to know. Thank you.
The Oregon-California border.
See, this is where the resource sharing comes in, Abby. This is just like, where do we find what?
So what I'm hearing is, I'm going to zoom out on this a little bit. Just with it, so the text is going to get a little smaller, but I need to look at the list as a whole. So we're doing a lot of talking here on resource sharing. I think maybe we're going to have to workshop the name a little so people know what they're getting into. Like, when we announce, hey, you're going to go over to these 3 people if you want to talk about resource, like, people might not understand what we mean when we talk about it. So we might want to think about a name. I'm also hearing a lot of us chatting in on invisible disabilities. And then I'm going to throw in disability representation in the media, because I have a past lead on graduate / the chair of our youth steering committee who still wants a chance to run his roundtable. And I said, you do run the youth conference, so I'll let you do that. So I think maybe pulling on 1 or 2 more from our list, or if we have topics that we're not touching on here that folks feel passionate about and feel like they are able to help lead discussion on.
Maybe one on like intersecting identities. I don't know if that's a good idea or.
I don't think it's not a good idea. I think. No, Abby, don't erase everything. Ryan, is your hand still up from previously, or is this a new hand raise?
Oh, my bad.
No worries. I just wanted to make sure. I think there's a couple folks who we haven't heard from on topics. So I would love to hear from y'all if you haven't spoken up yet. If you have questions, or if you have ideas, or if you are really confused, or any of the above.
Confusion is my state of mind, so no pressure if you are confused.
That felt very long, but it is only 8:41. So, does anybody have anything to add, or?
Let's say. We've got 3. Should I run a poll? Are actually folks who use screen readers in the chat, if or in here, could you let me
go.
Oh, Shika, yeah, go for it.
What were we gonna say about screen readers?
I was gonna ask, are you able to participate in Zoom polls like with a screen
yeah.
reader?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just was not sure how well they do or don't work.
But what I was gonna say is, maybe have a topic about employment, because I got hired as MySale as an intern, and I know a lot of people don't have that opportunity to get hired at the same place that they interned, or even to get an internship, because I was about to not get an internship in my master's program until I reached out to my local SIL, and that's a requirement, so I wouldn't have not graduated.
Very cool. I think
in
employment
the
is
in the master program, yeah. So I'm really grateful for myself.
Andy, cool. Definitely a discussion on employment, I think, would be. I think it's something that many of us we spent a lot of lead on talking about employment and working. So
Yeah.
I don't want to call people out specifically, but I actually did want to check in. Jeremiah, I don't know if you're able to unmute now. I know you couldn't earlier, but I wanted to check in because right now you're our only high school student. So how are you feeling about these ideas? And are there things that you feel like you can speak to when we're, having these conversations? Having a hard time. Okay. Are there things that we can help make easier to understand or clarify? Like, no question is a bad question. Phone isn't connecting all the way. No.
Maybe type the question.
Abby, after the meeting, could you send this list to everyone? Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, I will definitely send the list. And as always, the recording plus Riley and Erica, you didn't happen to alt text your slides already, did you?
I did not, but I can if you would like me to.
I wouldn't say no.
Okay. I'll either do it tonight or by noon tomorrow.
Excellent.
Is that good?
That works.
And if I don't, remind me and text me until I do it.
I will.
Erica, let me know if you'd like me to help with that. I've never alt texted on Canva before, so
I've never either, but I assume it's kind of like Microsoft Word and stuff. So we'll see.
So the highlighted parts on the list, these are topics that we're definitely going to cover. So we've got disability representation in the media, resource sharing and locating, and invisible disabilities. So I think we should pick one or two more from this list before we depart for the evening that we want to talk about. And then we can, next week, I think folks can pick which groups they want to participate in. I would say pick like a top 2 or 3, because we do need to make sure we have folks covering everybody, like all the different topics. So you know what I'll do is I will run a poll. And folks,
Emily put in the chat to highlight education and maybe also highlight advocacy. I think a lot of what we discussed today could also bleed into advocacy. So I know that's 5. So
that is 5.
In terms of advocacy, whenever we're talking about legislation or talking to representatives, I think talking to representatives is a good one. In terms of legislation, do we envision that kind of conversation? I mean, like talking about pieces of legislation that we support, or like, I guess, how do we envision the legislation discussion?
I believe we could certainly talk about disability related legislation, maybe about how legislation has changed over the years, and potentially tie in medical legislation as well. And I know it varies state by state, so it may be a very broad thing to talk about. That advocacy is definitely something that I would be interested in helping with. But I'll be bouncing around to different things, so it's really up to the participants.
Andy.
Maybe this is kind of my perspective because I come from such a large spread out state. But when I think of advocacy, I don't immediately jump to the statewide legislation scale. I tend to think of the smaller, like, local projects is what I tend to think of. Just as kind of like an example, last week I was at our county's Board of Supervisors and filed a public comment. And so I don't know where I'm going with that thought. I'm just thinking advocacy doesn't necessarily have to be large scale.
And I think that for a lot of the youth that are going to be attending this conference, that might be the kind of advocacy that they're doing. I know approximately 15 young people who have been to DC, like young, like teenagers who have been to DC to speak with their legislators. And there are certainly more, and not everybody who's going to be at the conference is going to be that young. We're going to have folks in their 20s, maybe their 30s, that are all just like talking around these topics. But for a lot of people, advocacy does look like working in your local government, or advocating within your school district, advocating within your town or your city. Or maybe it's even within the spaces that you occupy just day to day, like I know a young person who right now is advocating to get more accessibility in her local museums because like she's really interested in history and wants to be able to go.
Hayton, right?
Yes. Yes, peer-to-peer is a great topic as well, Cecile. Lavender says in the chat, I do think education can be its own separate topic, but there's a massive component of advocacy related to things like IEPs and 504s. I do think that that's true, that a lot of what we might talk about with education is around the idea of self-advocacy.
Abby, was your question like, do we want to make self-advocacy a topic?
I'm wondering if that, like, if we have like a systems advocacy up here.
Yeah.
And then we have like a self-advocacy under which education can fall. Does that feel comfortable to people?
Abby, I like that partition.
I am in favor. Yes, this is Naomi.
Okay. Then we go like this. Nope. Abby, use a computer correctly. You've been doing it since you were like 4.
You're doing great.
Thank you. Okay, so that puts us on disability representation in the media, which I know we don't have points under, but I know that certainly Erica and Noah will have lots to say. We have systems advocacy, we have resource sharing and locating, we have self-advocacy, and we have invisible disabilities. Does this feel good to folks as topics? I love this. All right, so what I would love for folks to do is, and I'll put this in the follow-up email with the PowerPoint, with this list, etc., is to start thinking about which topics you feel like you could comfortably lead about 90 minutes worth of conversation on. And remember, that doesn't mean you're talking for 90 minutes. In fact, you should not be talking for 90 minutes. How, like, do you feel like you have the knowledge to start and push along a conversation on these topics related to education and self-advocacy? We can also get into where people get hung up in the accommodations process. Some people get their accommodations just fine and the teachers don't respect them, while others need to fight to even get the accommodations at all.
Yes.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
definitely.
The number of students I've known over the years whose teachers will say like, oh, I don't do that. That's not going to work for me. Like, I'm sorry. It's not you that it needs to work for, Stephen. Like, it's not your job is to make it work for the student.
Stephen,
I don't know. Stephen's always the name I go for when I need to say a name very like angrily. Berated you before the final? Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah, I was in tears in the disability office because the director of disability services said he said he never got that letter when I sent it to him multiple times and said, can you please sign it? And he just never did. So then I was like in tears because I wasn't able to take my test.
I know a young person who recently had to fight to be able to get the SAT and the ACT given to her in an accessible format. And like had to fight the college board over it because
I had my fair share of fights with the college board over AP tests that was a nightmare.
Right. How do we feel about all of this, folks? Are folks feeling like at least a little more prepared to think about these things and to deeply passionate? Yes. Me too. Riley and Erica, very good job prepping everybody. You made very, very good points. And just think, this could be 2 of you next year, because we will have mentor positions next year as well. So if that's something you want to think about and consider for the future. I'm trying to think of anything else. Riley and Erica, any last thoughts, feelings, concerns?
I just have to say that my favorite part of this is reading people's journals, because I feel like I get to know them better. And then I think about last year when Abby was reading my journals and how she knows so much about me, but Abby, I don't know as much about you.
I'm going to say, you and I did just spend a whole week together in the woods this summer, which I think helped. But I want to be very clear that the stuff that y'all share in journals is not being even like, I don't even ask Riley and Erica about like the journals that they read. It is very much like just between you and whoever is reading them. The only time anything would be shared is if, God forbid, one of you said something, you know, wildly concerning or something. But like
super controversial, like you put your milk before your cereal, you know.
Those people, what it evil. How do you know how much cereal to pour? You don't.
Or if one of you rickrolled me, that that would be noted.
Why am I remembering something about you and Jill and a rickroll?
Not like it didn't happen multiple times.
All right, folks. Thank you very much for your participation today and always. Next week is our last class, if you can believe it. And then in 2 weeks, we will all be hanging out together in California.
3 weeks.
3 weeks. 3 weeks. I'm leaving in 2 weeks. I'm flying out on the 4th. Thank you. 3 weeks. So we'll be hearing next week from 2 of my favorite human beings, Mike Beers and Sapphire Murphy, who are wonderful pals of April. And Sapphire was actually also in last year's class of Lead On folks, and met Mike during his presentation to everybody last year. And the 2 of them became like BFFs and are now on a bunch of advocacy calls and stuff together. So Sapphire emailed me today and asked if y'all were more of a, asked me about this group's vibe. So she wanted to know if y'all were more of a, Andy, that's very good. If you all were more of like a presentation type group or more of a discussion type group. And I said discussion. So y'all be ready for some discussion, and it's going to be fun because it's going to be with Mike and Sapphire. So
wow, right after me and Riley put together this presentation, it was perfect.
I would like to say actually what I said. Let's see. Let me read exactly what I said. The group has responded well to either, but I think ideally a conversation this week would be great, is exactly what I said. So, Yeah, Rachel, I hope you have such a good time. And if you are doing things, you have not missed a single class. And if you got to do what you got to do. Life happens. So, all right. It is 9 or 8 or 7 or 6. So, we will
This is
see.
Shika. I have a question.
Sure.
For the next group or like the couple days before the conference, are you able to send everybody's number or like ask everyone in an email?
Sure.
So we
So
could have like a group chat like during the conference or
as long as folks are comfortable with that, we definitely
Okay.
Everybody should have everybody's email address at least, because it's in
Okay.
everyone's emails are in the I don't hide people's emails when I send y'all emails. Yes, we do have journals due next week. So journals due on Tuesday, and then you will have one final journal due on the 3rd after our last class. And then you don't have to do any more journals, at least for me. Oh, Barbie movie was so good. I've seen it twice now. So good. All right, folks, have a good night. I will see you next week.
Good night, good weekend.
Yes, have a nice weekend. Bye, everybody.
Bye.